Hello, lovelies. Welcome to another Friday show for Just Healing, where we are sharing our journey on restoring autoimmune disease. So, I want to start with a story. When I first heard someone suggested that water could make a difference in autoimmune disease, I thought that sounds way too simple to actually work. But after using water in a way that matched nature, I regained my strength, stamina, and mental clarity in 6 weeks that primary progressive multiple sclerosis had taken from me over the past 10 years. And if it could help me, maybe it'll help you in your autoimmune condition, even just keeping your body at an optimal condition. So, in this video, I'm going to show you what water has to do with reversing autoimmune disease. We'll show the science behind it that convinced me that I should give this a try, and how you can start making and using water the right way so you'll start healing your cells instead of pissing it away. But first, before I show you the connection between water and reversing autoimmunity, I want to make clear that whatever I share today is our personal experience, and none of this should be taken as medical advice. So please consult your professional before you start any of this if you decide to. So, what does water have to do with reversing autoimmune disease? So, it's like your cell. Think about your cell phone with a low battery. The phone works, but it's slower. And if you're using a slow charger, your phone might never really charge. So this is how most of us live. But if you have an autoimmune condition, that slow feeling is like it's all the time. And well, according to Dr. Batmangalich, he says, "You're not sick, you're thirsty," and he's saying while he had a theory that chronic dehydration ends up triggering it triggers autoimmune disease. It triggers histamines in the body, which is like an emergency signal from your body, which causes allergies, asthma, inflammation, and pretty much every autoimmune disease out there is some sort of inflammation or one of these things in the body. So while he was an Iranian prisoner, he said he treated over 3,000 fellow prisoners for peptic ulcers, which, with only water, he reduced chronic pain conditions. He said they all got better with just water. And once he got out, those experiments led him to a much larger theory that arthritis, asthma, and other chronic pain conditions were also being mislabeled as dehydration. And if your body is left in this dehydrated state for too long, it starts damaging tissues where the body looks like it's attacking itself, thus looking like autoimmune. So, how much water does an average person need? So, when I was talking with this with Rita, here's Rita now. So, Rita, if I can ask you, how much water does the average person need? How do you gauge that?
So I use the formula of half your body weight in ounces. So if you're 100 pounds, as an example, you need 50 ounces of water. Is that right? Half your
Okay.
body weight in ounces. Yeah. So that works out to be about 6 cups of water. So if you're 200 pounds, that's 12 cups of water, right? So the bigger you are, the more water you would need. So that's sort of where I would start, right? So take your weight, half your body weight in ounces, and start there.
So, if the average person needs roughly half their body weight, when I first started showing symptoms, I was 220 pounds. And I was drinking less than half of what Rita just suggested of what I should be drinking in a day. But even now, I'm still not drinking enough. But my autoimmune improved quickly, and conditions to get better they continue to get better every day, which leads us into the science. So I was guided to take a course in hydration, and I learned how the mitochondria uses water and oxygen in a multi-stage process to create energy. But while it's generating energy, water is also being produced. So in my mind, I needed to get my hydration up, and as a bonus, I make my mitochondria stronger. And as I learned about Gerald Pollack and the zone of protection, our bodies create disease. They create our bodies create to keep disease away. So think about this zone of protection like a raincoat. And while wearing it, you stay nice and dry, but your feet might still get wet. It might get wet from the splashes or whatever else. So while Dr. Pollack stumbled on this protective water that our body creates, it's called exclusion zone water, or easy water for short. And let me just show you a picture of Dr. Pollack. There we go. There's his book, The Fourth Stage of Water. So when I was looking at this, he saw that with our cells protected, it functions better. It says it keeps toxins and heavy metals out, and it only allows what the cells need to function optimally. So the theory behind easy water is that it's that you want to build more of it. And especially if you're dealing with something like autoimmune disease, that's where heat comes in. So Pollack found out just 5 minutes of infrared light, warmth on your skin from the sun, a fire, or anything infrared, like sauna, increases this protective zone by 3 times. So if mitochondrial dysfunction is linked to almost every disease, I want to protect my mitochondria and give it the best chance to get stronger by increasing this easy water. So if the water I drink fuels the mitochondria, and the mitochondria produces more water because I'm feeding it good water, then the water I want to drink needs to be the best. And this next part gets me most excited because something my higher consciousness has always told me, and now science has shown me a potential connection. So Veda Austin, she's the author of The Secret Intelligence of Water, and another book called The Living Water. So here is, let me get her front book. This is the front of her book, and it's The Secret of Water. So in this book, she spent over 10 years photographing water, and she took the picture the moment the water changed from water to ice. So it's a technique called collective molecular photography, or CMP. So she built on Masaru Emoto's work, and Masaru is the one that had the jars with the rice and gave it intentions by talking to it every day for 30 days. And he showed how by talking to it made changes, by not talking to it, it kind of went bad, and by saying bad things to it, it got really horrible. So she built on this work by giving intentions to liquids with not only the words, but also thoughts, prayers, music, and even a person's gaze or presence. And by freezing the water in petri dishes, she just used a camera and her freezer. So because of her simple setup, thousands of people said that they tried it and they froze their own water, and they ended up getting similar results, they said. So she says water is a form of fluid intelligence. And this is where it gets excited for me. She says this fluid intelligence is aware and responsive to human thoughts. So since our bodies are primarily made of water, before I drink anything, I hold it near to my heart and draw on the historic knowledge of healing, restoring, and rejuvenating my cells to superhuman health. Because knowledge, water contains all the historic consciousness of this earth. We can tap into it. That includes if you believe in aliens or other species or technology or knowledge, but everything from the beginning of creation till now. It is an all-knowing intelligence that is on this earth, and our bodies are made up of it. So let me ask you this. Have you ever left a glass of water on the counter overnight? Because when you drink it the next day, it has a really strange taste. It doesn't even taste like water. And Victor Schomburger, he's an Australian forester, and he's a self-taught naturalist who spent decades just sitting outside observing streams, rivers, forests, and ecosystems in the Alps. So he believed water's movement determined whether it was alive or dead. He called them living water and dead water. So that glass of water sitting on your counter overnight, in my mind, it's dead water because it's been sitting there for a while. And it has very high positive charge. And water that's been moving, like the water that travels through natural mountains and streams, it's moving left and right. It's alive. And they have a negative charge. Just like when you do earthing or grounding, our bodies collect those negative charges. Well, if the cells in your bodies lose too much electric and negative charge, and it has too much positive charge, the mitochondria becomes imbalanced and it can't make energy, which means it can't create water. The mitochondria becomes dysfunctional, and that now becomes the potential of autoimmune like conditions, like what's going on with me. So what does this mean for water sitting on the counter, sitting in your fridge, sitting in the pipes, just waiting to be brought on there? So I believe it means that we need to activate it and restore its negative charge. At least that's what came through in a channeling session I did a bunch of years back, and I didn't quite understand it, but now I do know the science behind it. And now in that hydration course, they also hypothesized the same thing about the movement of water. So I wanted the question, how do you structure water to mimic nature's negative charge and bring in the highest vibration of healing? So if we want to give our water that life again, Schomburger believes that we need to move it in a way that nature does. And decades later, that Gerald Pollack research on easy water offered that possible connection, that explanation. So his research found that water near water-loving surfaces, like our organs, our fascia, the water that is being agitated or moved, becomes more structured and carries a stronger negative charge. So think about water in nature. It's twisting, turning, it's going through mountains and rivers. That kind of movement vortexes the water. It creates that spin, making it living water or structured. So as I hold water to my heart, I'm connecting with the historic knowledge of water. I vortex my glass while spinning it. And after doing that for about 30 seconds, I believe I'm drinking pure healing, knowledge that's hydrating my body, fueling the mitochondrial restoration, and a major reason why I regained my strength, stamina, and mental clarity in those 6 weeks that PPMS had taken away from me these past 10 years. But now my life is restored. I've gained those 6 months back. So I can't say for certain this is true, but I feel this is the right thing. And science was to connect the dots, and as others connect the dots for me, I'm seeing the same thing. But structured water isn't the only thing that your cells and mitochondria uses to restore health. You need to feed it the right foods And this is where Rita spent the last 20 years helping her clients balance their cellular health. So I'll say this now in our next video. So watch the next video and join us next week to see how a body should be balanced without compromising on taste. That was really interesting as I put that together and found that information. I just want to say good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. So Rita's been doing this for a long time, and one of the big questions is, I thought I was hydrated enough, but I wasn't. And I know you've talked about this many times over the last 20 years. How do you know if somebody is dehydrated? Like, what are the symptoms?
So sometimes the symptoms are obvious, right? So being thirsty is, you've gone way past the dehydration. You are well into dehydration at that point. But I mean, it could be simple things like headaches, fatigue, heart irregularities, dryness, like just in general, dry skin. So like a lot of times for me, it's obvious because these are questions I ask people, right? So I'm asking questions about, their fatigue and any headaches and that kind of thing. So that can kind of sometimes lead me to ask more about hydration. And also you can also look at your urine, right? So like, what color is your urine when you go, right? So especially if you go frequently, is it, versus are you going, a couple times a day only, right? So those are all, again, signs that gives us information, right? So our bodies are always talking to us, and sometimes knowing what questions to ask or what to look for will give us the information we're looking for. But yeah, those would be the things that I would look at.
So if you're finding someone that's dehydrated themselves, what are you going to say to somebody to rehydrate themselves? What's one of the things that you do?
If I feel someone's dehydrated,
Yeah. So one of your clients, and you're saying that you're dehydrated.
yeah.
How are you telling them to rehydrate?
So I would say most people think they're drinking enough water, and I would probably say that too. Yeah, I'm drinking enough water, but I have a harder time drinking my water unless I truly measure it. And not to say that everybody has to sit there with like a measuring cup and measure every ounce of water, but if you're unsure, that would be one thing. Start with like at least measuring your water to see how much you're actually drinking. And also some of what you mentioned too, a lot of what I hear a lot of is like, water has no taste. It's too boring. I don't crave it. Like my body never asks for it. Right. And so sometimes you have to train yourself to just drink more water. And one of the things that worked for me was definitely having water at my nightstand. So first thing I do when I wake up is start drinking water. And it didn't take long for my body to like want water as soon as I wake up. Whereas before,
Mm-hmm.
right, because the body will adapt to whatever environment you put it in. It's going to adapt. So if you want it to adapt to being dehydrated, it will adapt. It might give you headaches all day long, or might make you feel like super tired all day long, but it will adapt. So for me, having that water when I first wake up, and now it's one of the first things I do when I wake up because my body's just looking for water, looking for hydration.
So how come people say when they just drink water, it ends up just passing right through them? Why is that happening?
That's okay. So a couple of things. So how much are you drinking at a time, right? So if you've got a liter of water and you're just going to gulp a liter of water down, the body cannot possibly absorb that much water. And the example I use was, I remember we went away one time for a week or something, and I came back, and there's flowers and plants, and I went to go water it, and of course I'm watering it, and the water is just like coming right through, like it was a hanging basket, and I'm just watering it, and the water cannot possibly be absorbed, right? So because it's too much all at one time. So if I go back and use that example of the plant, if I do a little bit of water at a time, then it has a chance to absorb. So same with the body. If you're just gulping, cups of water at a time, try sipping, right? That's why teas come in handy for a lot of people, because you're sipping the tea. You're not necessarily like chugging it down. And the other thing is the addition of minerals. The water can't get into the cells without a driver. The mineral is the driver. So if you don't put minerals into your water or have minerals with your water, the water really is just not going to get into the cells. This is where we want it to be, inside the cells, right? So those would be the two things.
So where are you getting minerals from? Like, how do you add it in?
So salt is usually the simplest way. So we're talking like mineral salt. So salts that haven't been refined. So not your white table salt that you use for cooking. Hopefully you're not using white table salt, but something that hasn't been processed. And so most people are familiar with the Celtic sea salts, the Himalayan salts, like those types of salts. Mind you, there's some information about heavy metals in them, but what I'm trying to say is like minerals, salts that have not been processed, right? So you can do your research on the different types of salts that there are, and salts can vary, right? So some salts will say 60 trace minerals, 70 trace minerals. So these are the minerals that the body actually needs. You actually can even go to the health food store and buy trace minerals as a liquid, and you just add drops to your water. If you're not prepared to do the salt thing, but so that's how I would get water into your cells, and not necessarily just peeing it out.
So why can't, like, I mean, what's wrong with table salt? What's going on with it?
Say that again.
Why can't you use table salt?
Table salt, like refined white salt, is just sodium and chloride. Where's the other minerals? We get enough sodium in our day. Okay, we get some chloride. That's another mineral. But where's the magnesium? Where's the manganese? Where's the cobalt? Where's the everything else? Where is it? Right. So regular just white table salt actually demineralizes the body at the end of the day.
So, so what are the minerals actually?
What are the minerals?
Yeah, not specifically, but
so
why do we need to add minerals?
So minerals, think of minerals as the driver, right? So we need the minerals, and also think of, most people are aware of the term electrolytes, right? So make sure you're taking your electrolytes when it's hot outside and you're sweaty, or if you're an athlete, like make sure you're taking your electrolytes, right? So electrolytes are basically minerals, and it's more or less like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. There's chloride, there's phosphate. So there's a number of minerals, and these minerals support a number of things in the body. But think of your heart. Your heart needs these electrical impulses, and that's what these minerals help do. But the minerals also help get the water into the cells.
So I'm seeing Jim is saying lemon water adds flavor and makes the water alkaline. Can't you just use lemons instead of minerals? Is it the same thing? Is it different?
You can use lemon in conjunction with. You can do both.
And then what's electrolytes then?
Electrolytes are minerals. So the ones that I mentioned. So the electrolytes, so we think of electrolytes more to help the heart, right? So if you're an athlete and you've dehydrated yourself, and you're sweating out all the minerals that the heart needs, then you can get into heart issues, right? So these electrolytes are basically like, there's about 8 main electrolytes, which are minerals. So but there's tons of minerals. Remember periodic charts in science, right? There's a ton of minerals, but the electrolytes are specific to good heart health and also just staying hydrated.
Can you drink too much water?
Yes. Yeah. So you can flush out too much.
And what would happen?
It's less likely to go into to becoming too alkaline, but it does happen. Off the top of my head, I would feel like it would sort of be this, not exactly the same, but I think there would be heart issues because now the minerals are now being diluted. Right. So I think also fatigue would probably be there, right? Because now we're diluting all the minerals.
So if you're diluting minerals and you keep on adding minerals when you drink your water, can you end up getting too many minerals?
I mean, I yes and no. These are hard questions. So you can get too many minerals. It depends on the mineral, right? If you get too much magnesium, you might get diarrhea. If you get too much calcium, you might get, other symptoms. If you have too much potassium or too much sodium, then you could get swelling, right? So yes, you can have too much.
So we've talked about the quality of minerals many times, and or the quality of water that you're doing. And Linda brings up a great question about water filters, and one is the Sanativa, Brita, and osmosis systems. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so those are all different ways of filtering water. So the Santivia system is actually a very cool system. It actually, you put water in and it goes through different filtration systems like rocks and charcoal and things like that. So it's a great way to filter out things you don't want to be drinking. Tap water, I really honestly don't recommend people drinking tap water. I know some people say their tap water in the city is great, and but pool water is alkaline too. I wouldn't be drinking my pool water. So all in all, filtering your water is really important. Santivia is one system. I do like that system. The Brita filters out more odors and a few things in our tap water, but because it's mainly just like a charcoal type filter. So it doesn't do a lot, but I guess it's one step above tap water if that's all you have. And then the reverse osmosis is another system where it takes your water and it removes everything out of the water. So if you're drinking reverse osmosis water, depending on the system you have, some systems will have a system where they add minerals back in. Otherwise, it's basically demineralized water. So it's important to add minerals back in.
And but so you have to add minerals back in. So it's isn't that kind of dead then in a way too? Dead water, like isn't that like distilled water where there's absolutely nothing in there?
In a sense, yeah. So neither distilled or reverse osmosis are meant to have minerals in there unless you put it back in. Distilled water is just a different process. It's like steam, right? So you're collecting steam water.
So these systems, as Linda's asking here, it's they're not adding any minerals back. They're just removing.
Right. The newer RO systems, they do have an element where they add minerals back in. The question being, is it enough minerals? I don't know. I don't know enough about the systems
Yeah,
or
I
haven't
noticed
looked
a
into it, I
difference.
guess.
When we're adding, so I create a solution called Sole, which mimics the cerebral spinal fluid, and I use the Sole water to put minerals, which is essentially just a good quality sea salt that Rita sourced and found out. Um, but I noticed if we just use a system that is remineralized automatically, or we're adding drops of trace minerals compared to the Sole, I'm noticing a big difference. Like I feel better when I get a big shot of the Sole in there, and in that I think it's because I'm getting more minerals. But after a while, having too many minerals, it it gave me the runs. So I needed to pull back on it and build myself up. Found my limit, and then start pulling myself back when I got there. So that's what at least what I found out. But that brings up a great question about the Berkey water system. We've got one right behind Rita
Yeah,
there.
got one right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that we're in an apartment, before we had a reverse osmosis unit, and we ended up getting the Berkey. But what we found out about the Berkeley system is you need to make sure that it has the fluoride filter on there. Their regular systems don't um, they don't clear out the fluoride, and fluoride is it's what calcifies a lot of your bones, your systems, but primarily well, I don't know about that other part, but definitely
It's a
your
neurotoxin, basically.
say it again.
It's a neurotoxin.
It's a neurotoxin.
Yeah.
So it's been shown to calcify the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is what keeps us connected to our higher consciousness. At least that's what I know on a spiritual sense. And they're doing certain operations. You know, they're doing an autopsy on a like a 10-year-old, and these young kids, their pineal glands are already calcified, which is just a complete shame. So that's why I avoid fluoride as it is, but in the natural world, fluoride is a big no-no. So you need to make sure it's calcified. Is there any other reasons, like besides what I said about fluoride, that at least on a more medical side of things, where you
It
don't
can also affect thyroid. Yeah,
your
it also
thyroid?
affects the thyroid.
Yeah, I read recently that brushing your teeth with fluoride is very much different than drinking fluoride. That brushing teeth is like having it on the surface. It's doesn't have the same negative calcified effect as it has as drinking fluoride. Did you see that at all anywhere?
Okay, so this is the difference. So what our body actually needs for strong bones is fluorine. That's what it actually needs. Fluoride is like the chemical version, right? So yeah, so brushing your teeth with fluoride toothpaste, they say, oh, it helps strengthen the enamel and all of that. And whether it does or doesn't, at the end of the day, most people are going to be swallowing a little bit of toothpaste every time they brush their teeth with that stuff, and especially if we're talking about kids, right? So it's like just you can get fluoride-free toothpaste. I would at least do that. But fluorine, fluorine is. I'm trying to think now where we get fluorine. It's in plant-based foods for sure, and I'm blanking on the food that was the highest in fluorine.
It's not like an algae or a seaweed of some sort.
No, it might come to me, but basically you can do a search for foods that contain fluorine, and so yeah, so if you're worried about bone strength and cutting out, your fluoride, do at least look at that. Yeah, so yeah, it's not the fluoride your body needs, it's fluorine. That's basically it.
Fluorine. Okay. But that brings up a point here with Celtic sea salt is good. And I thought the same thing until Rita did some research on the Celtic sea salt that's considered the highest mineral sea salt that there is. Can you talk about what you found, Rita?
Yeah, so there's third party companies out there that they go out and test different things. And there was a big research study or just analysis of different salts out there. And, they looked at the Celtic sea salts, the Himalayan salts, other whole salts like sea salt type things. And when they did their third-party testing, they found there's a different ones have higher incidences of heavy metals, right? So you can actually do a search for that, but I think it's like Healthy Mama or something like that, where they study a lot of things. And honestly, sometimes too much information can be too much, just too much. Yes, so the Celtic sea salt, the Himalayan salts, the idea behind them is the high mineral contents of all minerals. There may be some heavy metals in there. If you're concerned about heavy metals, you want to get tested for heavy metals, there's things we could do with that. We can do hair analysis. We can use our pendulums. So if heavy metals is a concern and you've read that study, just reach out to us. We'll give you some tips into the heavy metal issue. But yeah.
And that was actually one of the big reasons why heavy metals, because at some point as a hobby, I was teaching on a motorcycle course, and being on that hard pavement with all the motorcycles around, with the gas and the fumes and the chemicals, Rita would give me a heavy metal detox, or she would just give me a foot bath detox, and these flakes of metal would actually come out of my skin and reform in these flakes of something. So the heavy metals would get pulled out, which was really interesting to me. But it's also what we talked about earlier about the easy zone, the exclusionary zone water, the EZ water that the body produces that we want to produce more of, because that ends up being that natural filter. It becomes the barrier. It doesn't let the heavy metals in. And things that can destroy it are things like Wi-Fi signals or non-native EMFs that can really break it down, or even some of the foods that we eat, which we're going to talk about next week. But, it really is getting that exclusionary zone up. At least that's been the research that I've come across from the people that know a lot more about this than I do. Increasing the exclusionary zone water, everything I've talked about in this presentation today. And that really is a blocking. I think it's a major factor of why my body's getting better. Yeah. Marigold says, I drink water that's filtered with reverse osmosis and ultraviolet water with minerals added back in. Since I don't know what minerals or how much, I add trace minerals from the health store. Is this too much?
Could be a yes, could be a no. So if you were my client, I would take my pendulum and I would just ask the body, is it too much? So maybe you can tune in to.
Yeah, I'm going to tune in then.
Okay.
To Marigold. Since she asked the questions, I'm assuming permission. Just give me permission anyways, Marigold. And I just want to find out about if you're having too much minerals. The first answer that I got was no. Okay. You're not getting too much minerals. It's okay. Your body's getting, is it enough minerals? You could actually do more minerals. But maybe don't start with that yet until we actually talk about more about Sole water and how you can or look up Sole water and find out more about that to get more minerals in your system. I guess what happened to me, so Sole water is a mixture of sea salt and water. You make a super high concentration, and then you take that and you dilute it down into isotonic water, which that's how I start my mornings. And that mimics the cerebrospinal fluid and the fluid around our brain. I was doing up to maybe about 6 to 18 milliliters. No, sorry, I would say 160 milliliters a day of that. And eventually, my body was made to capacity of how much minerals it had, and it then needed to get rid of it, and it got rid of it through my stool. And you'll know when it gets super soft and really wet, and that's when you start to back off the minerals. Now, after a year and a bit of doing this, I only start my morning with one vial or 10 milliliters of the isotonic water, and I put a quarter into each 500 ml glass of water, which is essentially 2 glasses of water, 2 cups of water. So that's fine for me now, and I feel that's where my body is good now. But I found for you, I think you could probably use more. Maybe do some testing, get some information on Sole before you actually start doing it. But you're good for now. You're good. Don't worry about it. Fact is, you're getting minerals in your body, and your body is happy. Remember to get that infrared light on you. So that again, that means getting out in the sun, and when you getting in front of a fire, in front of in a sauna, and that full spectrum lighting or energy, when you're in the light and you feel the heat on your body, that is going to get you up to 3,000 nanometers of energy that then converts the water and expands the exclusionary water in your body by 3 times, creating that protective layer around your cells and in your cells, and giving you a good balance between negative and positive energy. Yeah, very big, very big. Anything else that you want to say on that, Rita, on water at all?
On just water in general?
Well, actually, I did have one question. So a week or two ago, we were walking, and there's a lady walking near us, and one of her legs was like 2 or 3 times the size.
Mm-hmm.
And you said this is called edema. Did I say that right? Edema?
Yeah, edema.
What is that?
So, okay, so she probably had some lymphatic issues going on. So yeah, so one leg was at least twice or more of the size of the other leg. So there's 2 types of edema. There's like pitting edema and non-pitting edema. So sometimes it's just too much water not getting into the cells, so it's just floating around, and it's causing like increased space, right? Because the water's there, it's just not getting into where it needs to go. Okay. And then sometimes it gets trapped within these like proteins, and then the lymphatic system can't kind of like move them out, and so that again it just accumulates. And so that's more or less I believe what's happening with her. So her lymphatic, there's something going on with the lymphatic system, and so the fluids just build up and it just doesn't drain.
So is that a result of, let's say, drinking just RO water, or like a lot of pops or sodas? Or how about pop or soda? Can't that be good water for you? That's liquid. Why don't I just drink?
Yeah, I mean, it could be so many reasons, right? So it could be, yeah, maybe if it were both legs, I would say like, oh, okay, maybe it's something to do with lifestyle, right? So how they stay hydrated, things like that. In this case, it could be maybe she had surgery. Some of the lymph has been removed or damaged, or something's going on that one side. So I think it's a combination of things. It's hard to say.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
And why can't I just drink Coke or Pepsi all day?
So that's a lot of acid in the system. The body's not meant to have I think it's phosphoric acid, I believe. You can't live in an acidic environment and expect the body to be able to function properly.
But how about like Sprite or ginger ale? Isn't
Well,
that
then
better?
that's just sugar. So now we're just putting sugar into our
It's just
system.
sugar.
So sugar water. So
Yeah.
yeah, so in general, our bodies are going to be just fine without any of that in your system, right? Just stick with the water, tea, lemon water, like Jim said earlier. Flavoring your water, putting intention into your water, and also the one thing that comes to mind for me when we're talking about water is like, I think living, in North America, we don't even think about where our water's coming from. You just turn the tap on and there's water. Like, what's there to think about? And I have a little garden space on a farmer's field right now, and I don't have access to water. I have to go over to their well and pump it and whatever, get my water so that I can water my plants. And I only have these like 4 liter jugs, and I walk all the way over and I fill it, and I walk all the way back to my garden space, and I have to do this like 4 or 5 times just to water my plants. And I think to myself, like, how grateful are we that we actually can easily have water at any time of day, right? And we don't even think about it. So just gratitude, I guess, is one thing I would say. Um, whenever you go get your water, just think about how lucky we are to be just have water at our
Yeah.
fingertips.
That's primarily what today's presentation was about, was how we're getting our water. Because we think about spring water, it's healthy, it's good, it's full of minerals, but if it's sitting on the shelf, it's becoming stagnant. So we need to reactivate it, vortex it, bring it back in, and start bringing that consciousness back into the water and give it love. Now, Jim says carbonated water is also not desirable. The interesting thing about carbonated water, those bubbles end up naturally structuring the water, giving it that movement and life. That's the good thing about the negative part of that you might find with structured water or with carbonated water. And Marigold's asking about a brand canned drink with carbonated water with real fruit juice added. So again, it's structured, but this sounds really good, Rita. Why do, would I want to drink this? Don't I? What's what I got to watch out for, or is this good for me?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about the carbonation. They say that in the long term, so if you had a lot of carbonation in your water, it can make you more acidic. I don't know how the science works on that. But I think the occasional carbonated drink I would not be concerned with. If that's all you're drinking, then I would need to do a little bit more research as to the why is not great. I do know it's not great if you're doing it, if that's all you're drinking is carbonated. But the occasional drink, I have the occasional drink with fizzy water, basically I call it, and it's enjoyable, right?
I'd be more curious about how is it being carbonated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it that's making it carbonated? Are they using a chemical? Is there a drug? Is it just air, like the compressed air that you see? But what's the quality of that, and how is it being sustained? So I'd be really curious about their process and how it's being used. I noticed that when I was actually years back when I was doing cannabis, medical cannabis, I looked at their process for extracting it. And one uses chemicals, the other uses a more natural process, an organic process. Um, yeah, and he says bubbly water seems to go through my body. Now you actually, or buble, I should say, buble water. You get the buble, don't you? Like, what's so great about it? Like, does that work?
Is Again, back to what you were saying. I'm not sure how they carbonate it. I don't know the science behind it, but yeah, if it's going through your system quickly, it could be because it's cold. That's another thing that happens when you're drinking cold water, that flushes through quicker, especially why it's in Chinese medicine anyways. They never recommend cold anything, even cold food. So it could be I don't know if it's the carbonation part or if it's the cold water part that makes it flush, go through quicker.
Well, so today, what I've learned about water is way beyond what we know about water. And a lot of the Nobel laureates that I followed, one of the mentors I follow, she said that these Nobel laureates that discovered the things about the mitochondria, the rebuilding, the exclusionary zone water, a lot of them, I don't know exactly what, I'm just paraphrasing now. She says they end up going into water research afterwards because it's one area that is so important. And if you think that water and liquid is something that we drink every day, we get the sunlight onto our bodies and need that every day. There's also the moonlight, there's our sleep. There's certain basic fundamental things. And when we start incorporating those, you start reversing disease, like I've been doing in this body. So at a minimum, remember any water that you get, just give it a little spin. There's actually devices that you can buy that do this for you and structure it. That's probably way better than just spinning it. But at a minimum, I don't want to spend $450 for a device. I'm just going to spin my water. I'm going to hold it to my heart. I'm going to spin and just give it love, appreciation, and knowledge, and utilize all knowledge and consciousness of the healing power of water, of giving it structure to match it to nature. And it's a very easy, simple thing to do. It's much like before you eat your meal, you give it a little bit of attention and you give it some love. And there's another large missing part that if we think about structured water, the only thing that our bodies need, the sun, the moon, the sleep, if you think that's it, we got to remember that we need the right foods. We need that right intention. And this is what I've watched Rita do for the last 20 years. It's also why she's written 4 cookbooks on her research into food and how it affects the body. So we're going to get into that next week. So watch the next video, come back next week, and to see how a body should be balanced without compromising on taste. So thank you all for being here and your questions and being part of this. Thanks, Rita, for doing this with me. And next week, it's going to be the Rita show because we're going to have a lot to learn. Let's see that, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.